Did you know you can buy silver at spot price? Get your 10-ounce bar of silver at spot price today. Go to sdbullion.com/RP. Not only will you be buying silver without any premium, you'll also be supporting the independent media. Reluctant Preppers gets a small commission when you take advantage of this special offer, going to sdbullion.com/RP. That's sdbullion.com/RP.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We're delighted to have a returning guest today, Chris McGoey, the crime doctor, a security expert who is called upon frequently to give expert witness and testimony in legal proceedings on security. He's called upon as an expert from facilities that want to increase their security, and he's sought after by individuals in his crimeschool.com website for how people can increase their physical security in many different ways. Chris, thank you for joining us again here on Reluctant Preppers.
Yes, good day, Dunnigan.
I wonder if I realize I can only give a brief touch of a few points of your background, but if you could give us, a minute so people really understand how it is that you are truly an expert in the area of security.
Well, I've been in this business for pushing 5 decades, closer to 47 years to be exact. I've operated my own private investigation company and professional security consulting company for over 33 years. And before that, I worked in the private sector for some big international corporations. So I've been around the security, crime prevention, loss prevention side of the street for all that time. While doing that, I have to work closely with law enforcement. I have a fistful of degrees and credentials and all of these things to make me book smart. But after doing over 7,000 security surveys of commercial properties, meaning, places that are open to the public, like we all go to, I kind of had to figure out, and I think I have, what it takes to make a place safe. We always talk about personal protection and self-defense and things of that nature, but we go to a lot of different places, and there has to be a way to prepare ourselves to anticipate likely things to occur, especially when it comes to crime, based on these locations if we can, before that we leave the safety of our home or the safety of our vehicle or hotel room. Can we do something from a planning stage to prepare ourselves better and lessen the likelihood of, becoming crime victims? So that's one side of the street, and that's part of what I do. I teach people, individuals and then corporations and property owners, how to do that. Now, the other side of that coin is how to make places safe. These people that operate these public venues have, in general, a duty to all of us to make them reasonably safe, not to operate an unsafe place, not to create an environment that they know is potentially dangerous. And by that, I mean a place where serious crime, violent crime in particular, has happened before. And they have a duty to take reasonable steps to anticipate those future crimes and do something about it. So we don't walk into a situation that is just not obvious. Now, as individuals, we could plan, we could prepare. I know a lot of your listeners are avid preppers, hence the name of your show, right? So you take precautions, and I know many of some of your listeners bear arms. They carry sidearms and other things. But when you go out in public, into public places, I don't want people in the position where the first thing they go to or have to go to is a firearm. I want them to be prepared long before some situation arises that they could take other steps, other non-lethal, non-deadly steps, including, number one, avoidance, to avoid the situation in the first place. So that's half of my focus. The other half are the places. The places have no idea what customers are going to show up. They don't know if you or I are going to show up today or tonight. and they don't know how we're going to act. They don't know anything about us. So they have to take the visitors to a commercial premises as they find them, from those that are mentally ill, those that are intoxicated or on drugs, that have a crime history, that are out looking intentionally to victimize someone, or someone who just acts plain stupid. They have to deal with all of those at all times, and how individuals interact with each other. I mean, we all hear the stories. You read them in the paper, stupid stories. You're in the movie. You might be there with your wife or your family, minding your own business. And people get into an argument over somebody having a cell phone on and they're texting, for example. And they'll get into a fight, an argument, then a fist fight. And then it'll turn to a shooting or some deadly outcome.
What are some of the sort of foundational principles that you talk about when you look at making places safe? Because we've had a variety of people on our channel. I know Brad Harris from Full Spectrum Survival is always talking about having a plan, planning your routes that are through your town if you needed to get out of town, or a place that you know that is safe for you to get to. If things get if there's unrest, civil unrest, how to avoid that. And avoidance is a key theme. You mentioned on it. We've had others on here. Dr. Arthur T. Bradley, author of the Handbook Preparedness for Disaster Survival, was on. He's talking about how it's always permissible and recommended to avoid a disaster rather than try to just tough it out. And it sounds like the same thing is true where you're talking about safety, unsafe situations. So what are some guiding principles that you use when looking at making places safe?
So let's take that track first. We said there's two tracks, what individuals could do, and then the second track are what should property owners or property managers do. As far as individuals, let me kind of tell you what my life is. And by no means is my life a normal one. Because of what I do, my level of caution is usually far exceeds that of the average person, just because I've had the experience of seeing the worst in people and the worst in places. So that weighs heavily on my mind. So if I tend to go to places that I are familiar with. I go to the same stores. I go to the same restaurants. I'll go to the same movie theaters. I'll go to the same shopping centers if I'm shopping, just to give you an idea. So I'm already comfortable with, and I already have some belief that it's a relatively safe place. That's one thing you could do. The other thing that I do, I try to, plan my activities somewhat. I try to avoid those situations that might be overly crowded, or where there's going to be people that are intoxicated or a high probability of being intoxicated or on drugs. That just ups the risk quotient, if you will, if you're mingling with people that may not be operating with all their senses and logically. So I'm going to avoid things like nightclubs. Part of it's just because I'm old. I can't stay awake any longer, but I just avoid those kind of places. I avoid, maybe things like concerts anymore these days, or things like that. I have to bite my tongue driving. And boy, you ask my wife, I'm screaming through the glass all the time at these knuckleheads out there driving on the road. But I know better than to roll down my window, to say anything, hostile or aggressive, including using gestures of any kind. No, one finger salutes of any kind. You just have to hold your tongue these days. I avoid that. And I constantly come across people that are obviously bullies. They're overly aggressive, harassing. And my first instincts, believe me, are to step up and throttle these people, or get them under control, or step in between people, or speak my mind to people that are being discourteous, rude, aggressive, or even threatening. I want to do it from my soul, but I don't. I can't, because it can go downhill very fast from there. Now, I'm not going to say I've never done it, and I'm not going to say I won't do it in the future, but I've sort of taught myself and trained myself that cannot be my first instinct.
If we could just hold on that point, because it's a very interesting one. A lot of guys feel the responsibility to be a provider and protector for their families, for their wife and children, for those that may be less strong or whatever. And not everybody is this way. Every family is different. But for people who have that sense of obligation to do everything within their power to keep their family safe, what I'm hearing from you is that confrontation and escalation are often not your highest probability play for increasing your family's safety.
If that's what you're hearing from me, I didn't express myself clearly. I'm speaking outside of the family right now. I'm talking about me alone in places where I might see conduct from others that I feel is inappropriate or wrong, or they may be threatening to others. I'm talking about my intervention on behalf of others, that I tend to show restraint until it's no longer reasonable that I maintain that way. Now, if we're switching gears over to family, if my wife is with me, I'm like these others. Obviously, I'm going to take that protective role. Bless her heart, she's been married to me so long that she's adopted a lot of my overcautiousness, much to her what she would do otherwise, but she just goes along with it. She knows that's the program. She knows when we go in a restaurant, we're not going to get the best seat, maybe right by the window. We're not going to sit out on the street at a table. I'm going to be somewhere where I can see the entire restaurant, where I'm going to see the entrances, who's coming in. I'm not going to be in a position where people come up behind me. It's just the way that it is. And she just had to deal with that and get along with it. Same way with movie theaters, same way with a lot of other places. There are certain seating that we'll take. She, like me, knows that when we walk into a space, we're always scanning the area. We want to know certainly where the exits are. We want to know what kind of people are around. We know that the people that are going to be involved with violence is generally going to be males, usually young males. We're not going to place ourselves near a group of people that, maybe fit that profile or just happen to be acting loud or obnoxious. We're not opposed to getting up and moving and relocating seats. Because I don't want to put myself in the position where I'm going to have to turn around, even to tell someone to shut up or watch their language or anything like that, because these days it creates a backlash. Now, I'm not talking about being a coward. I'm not talking about not standing up for your rights. I'm not saying that you have to back away from any obligations or things that you could lawfully address. I'm not saying any of those things. I am just saying that the best recourse, in my view, after looking at just thousands and thousands of incident reports and violent incidents where people get injured or killed, many of those involve something simple that escalates very fast into something. So my response and advice to most people now is avoidance is number one if you can. And then there's a continuum all the way from avoidance, planning to not put yourself in that situation, or with those group of people. But then when you come upon them to, if you can avoid, if you can, not escalate if you can, and all the way up to the point where it becomes confrontational, where now you're the victim. It's a continuum that might escalate into force or self-defense that individuals have to address. And yes, if I'm there with my wife, or if I had especially young children, they would be part of the program. They would know from birth or from contact with me how to behave themselves, how to conduct themselves in the same situations, whether I'm there or not. They know we're walking to the car in any shopping center that we're paying attention. We're scanning our surroundings, even if it's very subtle. You wouldn't notice. You're walking with me. You wouldn't even notice that I'm doing it, but I'm aware of who's in the parking lot. As I walk to the car, I've already parked my car at a certain spot where I know I can walk up on it, take a wide turn, kind of scanning around the car, make sure no one's around the car. I got my key in my hand. And I have one of those cars that you can open from a distance, but when I walk up on the car, it's unlocked. We're both inside. The door is closed. We always lock the door. We start it, and then we go on our way. That's just one example, but there's just a whole series of these little, maybe strange little peculiarities to many people, but to us, that's our lifestyle to be safe. And when people ask what I do or how I think they might act or what options do they have, I share with them, what I do, what we do. And it goes through everything from picking a hotel, uh, anything that you might do throughout the day. Go to a gas station to get gas, standing in line somewhere, someone cuts in front of you in line. I mean, all these little possibilities that can come up. If you plan and think about how you're going to act, and some of it involves biting your tongue, like I said, until it escalates where biting your tongue is no longer sufficient, you have to respond, and that's different.
And are there some inherent differences between safe places and unsafe places? You mentioned a few principles. Are there more things that you look for in places to determine whether this is going to be a safe place, and or whether there's something you need to do to make it safer for yourself?
Yeah, there is. And most people are pretty good at this. I mean, you can go to almost any area, pick a place, and you could scan the place, and you're going to make judgments. Because, if you're a mature adult, you've been a lot of places, you have a basis of comparison. That's one of the few things about being as old as I have. I've done more of that than most people. And since I do this for a living, I'm really an expert of knowing the difference and seeing the visual cues. But most of us know we're in a, quote, high crime area. Objective signs might be bars on windows, might be graffiti all over the place, might be people standing on corners that look like gangsters, a lot of video cameras, just rundown neighborhoods, for example. There are things that should make your antenna go up. And I just constantly are harping on people, your antenna should go up and you should start paying attention. And you start doing everything with intention when you're in what appears to be a hostile environment. I think people can pick and choose, too, when they go places. Everyone agrees, every law enforcement agency, and I've borne it out through years of crime analysis, it's more dangerous at night. After 8 o'clock at night, that scale starts going up of being more dangerous, especially as you get in urban or downtown areas. As you get closer to midnight, it continues to go up. And around the 2 o'clock in the morning when all the bars close, it's kind of a peak time as well, where you have more people that might be intoxicated or under the influence of something moving around, especially, again, in urban areas. And those are times where either you shouldn't be there, or if you are there, that you're acting, in a very cautious manner. You're avoiding crowds, you're avoiding direct confrontation, and you're trying to take advantage of things like your car. To me, a car is an excellent safety capsule. If you're inside, the windows are up and the doors are locked. It takes a good deal of force to get through a window to get at you. Plus, you could step on the gas. You could put it in gear, forward, backwards, pretty easily. You're pretty safe in there. And if you take advantage of that. But switching gears up just a little bit to places, not everything we have any control over. We go to a strange place and we really can't get a read on it. We really don't know that there's a fight there every weekend. We don't know there's been homicides there. We don't know there's been kidnappings there. We don't know any of those things. We have to kind of take it on its face. That's when it falls on the feet of the people that own the property or manage the business. And that's where I spend a good deal of my time as a security consultant. That's basically what my practice is. I work with properties and help them understand what they need to do to make it reasonably safe. But make it safe for people and property too, but mainly people, and mainly from the potential for violent crime. And there's many things that they could do. And so I've written a couple of books on the subject that talk about how to do a risk assessment, how to do a crime analysis, how to evaluate whether the security plan for your property is reasonable or not, and then how to put that plan in place and actually do something to make it safe for people. So when you invite customers on your property, their risk of being assaulted from some knucklehead who's also there is reduced to its absolute minimum.
So what are some of those? I mean, those are principles that people can look for when they're entering a property to see if it meets their criteria, because sure, as you said, when you enter a space, you scan it and you look for certain things, some of which you mentioned, like where are the exits, where are people who seem like they might be more volatile than others, where we can sit, where we're not going to have someone coming up behind us. But some of these other principles about places that you recommend to place owners are things that you would be able to scan very quickly and recognize as well in other public venues. Can you teach us just some first things that people can watch for when they're entering public places?
Sure. Let me give you a thumbnail sketch. This is very complex, so I'm going to try to boil it down to just something that's very simple and that everybody can relate to. One of the important factors about whether a place is, when I say a place, a commercial property, meaning some store, some business that's open to the public, that's inviting you to come on the property, to shop, to dine, to spend time, whatever. That's what I'm talking about. The overriding theme is the nature of the premises. Any place you want to go, what's the nature of this place? And what that means is, what kind of business is it? What are its hours of operation? What does it sell? What service does it provide? Some examples like, let's talk about a flower shop. The nature of a flower shop. It might be open from 9 in the morning until maybe 8 o'clock at night. Then it closes. It sells flowers and related products. It's not a bar. It's not a place where you can hang out. There's not tables there. It's going to attract a certain demographic, people that want to go buy flowers. And criminal element usually is not going to hang out at a flower shop, right?
Right.
So you're relatively safe there. So those are things. I mean, this is such a almost ridiculous example, but we're going to take it to different extremes. A hardware store is another example. Limited hours. It's not open all night. It doesn't sell alcoholic beverages. You're not inviting people to come and hang out. You're not inviting people to be involved with entertainment or dancing or any of these other kind of things. It's just to buy tools or equipment, walk in, buy what you want, get out type of thing. A laundromat would be another kind of a benign example, even though being a cash-based business, it could have a robbery risk involved. But for the general customer going during business hours, especially during the day, it's going to be extremely low risk. That's what I mean by the nature of the premises. Now, switch that up to higher risk properties, like a convenience store that's open 24 hours. And it's right off the highway or on a major thoroughfare. Is going to be a higher risk property. Now, at 6 o'clock in the morning, not so much. Most of the bad guys are home zonked out or not up and about any longer. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, the knuckleheads may be out there in full force, hanging out, plying their trade, maybe selling drugs or doing whatever. Might be just intoxicated, coming to make a purchase, and they cross your path. So the nature of the premises could change from different times of the day until late at night. So this convenience store or a nightclub or a bar sells alcoholic beverages. So you're going to attract a clientele that wants to be up and is up late at night, that's probably engaged in consuming alcoholic beverages. They may not be sober when you cross their path. So the nature of those businesses is going to bring some higher risk patrons to it, and they might cross your path. So that's what I mean by the nature of the premises. Anytime you go to some other venue that might be crowded, you're going to a concert, or you're going to, even football games or baseball games. I know any of us who have been to football or baseball games, they pack people in the stands like sardines, don't they?
Sure do.
You go to a football game for an NFL team, for example. Some of them, I know I was recently in Kansas City, they have a 4-hour tailgate session that's permissible, and they allow people to bring their own booze and drink as much as you want without being monitored by a bartender or really any legal oversight. So they can get completely hammered out in the parking lot before they even step into the stadium. And then they go up in the stands, and they're packed in there like sardines. And the stands can have 65, 75,000 people at a game. And by the end of during the game, they're drinking more alcohol, and then they get kind of amped up. So something like that can get out of hand and go south very fast and get very volatile and very dangerous. Even though it seems like it should be a nice family outing, to go somewhere like a ballpark. But the nature of the premises where you're selling alcoholic beverages and you're encouraging the consumption, and that's part of the culture almost, that's something you have to consider. I know a lot of families that just won't take their kids anymore to the ballpark just because of some of the intoxicated knuckleheads that are there. What are some other examples? Shopping centers. Thousands of people pour through shopping centers. And I've surveyed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these big mega malls. And if you look at the violent history of shopping malls, most of it's in the parking lot. Not inside the mall, but outside in the parking lot where we are on our own. When we pull in, park our vehicles, and walk to and from the car, we're on our own. And we don't think much of it. We think that once we get in the mall, there's lots of people around. It's a warm, well-lighted, looks like a safe place. But in that parking lot, you're not really capable of making that same judgment. But what we like about shopping centers and the parking lots, these bad guys also do. Auto thieves love shopping centers. I mean, it's a smorgasbord of vehicles for them to steal, isn't it?
Yep. And a lot of those people, they know once they see them get out of their car and go in, they know that they're not going to be there for a little while. They've got a little bit of time to operate.
Yeah, so you could pick their make, the model, any accessory, anything you want you can find in a shopping center. And like businesses, movie theaters where people are going to be in the movies for a couple of hours. They see you pull up and they like your truck, they might come back for it. And coming out of that shopping center, more than just property crimes, if they decide they want to rob you, they want to kidnap you, they want to do various things or involving a child. Again, if they're allowed to hang out in the parking lot and watch you come and go, they could literally wait for you to come back. They watched you go in, but they know you're going to come back to your car. So they'll tend to loiter out there in the parking lot somewhere close, usually within at least 75 feet. And they're going to watch you come back out to your car. And then they're going to make their move. So it's a combo there. The shopping center needs to have surveillance in the parking lot. That's why you see a lot of times the security patrols going up and down the aisles. And the security people are doing their job. They're looking for males hanging out in the parking lot just for that reason. But they're going to be watching for the people coming out not paying attention. And these days, I know you and I have talked before, these days, if you and I went out this afternoon to any shopping center anywhere in North America and we just parked and watched people, what would we see? We'd see people coming out completely oblivious to their surroundings, maybe texting, maybe looking at their Facebook page, who knows, talking even, or have their headphones on. But you can clearly see they're not looking around, they're not paying attention. You and I could walk up behind people while maybe they're standing at the trunk of their car, and they won't even see us coming until we tap them on the shoulder. It is
a cultural phenomenon right now, the distractedness of people on their devices. I heard a joke, and it made me crack up, but it's actually serious. They said they need another app that you can download for your smartphone. It's called the What's Going On Right in Front of My Face app. So like if you're about to step into an open manhole, it would pop up on your screen and say manhole, and you jump out of the way. So it's like as people walk around staring at their screens, you're really absolutely right. The situational awareness can drop to zero.
Yeah, don't get me started on phone apps. I do interviews all the time for the media, and I get these young reporters who are obviously millennials calling me up, and they want to ask me about phone apps, to prevent a mugging. Do I think they should have an app on their phone that would simulate, whatever, like you're calling somebody or you're on the phone with somebody or whatever. I always remind them the best app is between your ears.
And using your eyes and keeping your eyes around on your surroundings as well, it sounds like.
Yeah, I want that phone in your pocket. I want you paying attention to your surroundings. I want you scanning the area. I want you to have your keys in your hand while you're walking. And, something else I think we talked about before when I talked to groups, especially women's groups, one of the standard questions I get is, well, gee, should I be carrying pepper spray, to protect myself for personal protection? And And they haven't really thought about it, but I have. And again, I've talked to lots of women victims. I've read lots of reports of women and those that had pepper spray. In virtually every single case, the woman that had the awareness and had pepper spray couldn't get to it because it was buried in the bottom of her bag. And the same thing is true that I just told you, that most of these victims never see the assailant coming. It's a total surprise. So if the assailant is on you, if it's a total surprise, then is not the time to be, rooting around the bottom of your bag trying to find your pepper spray, because you're not going to come up with it in time. And the attacker is certainly not going to let you reach in and retrieve what you're getting. What I advise them is, if you really feel you need pepper spray, if you're in a dangerous environment, and even after everything I've said, there are times, I've talked to young students that are going to a college or a law school that just happens to be adjacent to a high crime neighborhood. And what are they going to do? They have to get to class. And if they can't get a friend, they can't do all these other things. If you really think you need to have pepper spray, it has to be in your hand. I want you to have it I want you to be trained on it first and certified how to use it. I want you to have been practiced with it. I want you to have been sprayed in the face at least once, so you know what it does and what it doesn't do. But I want you to have it in your hand. I want you to have your thumb on the trigger, and I want you to walk with intention. And every single woman that I've talked to, could be a man for that matter, once they got that pepper spray canister in their hand and the thumb on the trigger, guess what? They're on high alert now. They're not distracted any longer, because that's a cue. That's like a visual cue. I guess it's just like putting a lollipop in your mouth or whatever other thing to remind you, a string around your finger. This tells me I'm in a hostile environment now, that I need to have this thing in my hand. So all of a sudden their head's on a swivel. They're looking around. The fact that they take it out when they walk out of the parking lot, I guarantee you they're going to move their car to a safer location, knowing that they got to run the gauntlet coming back, and they're going to park maybe in a different parking lot or a more well-lighted place, or try to walk with a buddy, whatever the case is going to be. But that can of pepper spray does wonders. And you almost never, most women I talk to that have pepper spray never use it. They'll spray the interior of their purse before they do anything else.
So that's an example of a kind of a tool, but most of the tools that you're describing are actually habits of situational awareness and planning, forward planning. Other examples of that in sizing up safe places and avoiding unsafe places?
Well, that's it, planning. I mean, the parking lot scenario I talked about, I have a place when I pull into a parking lot, especially when I don't know, I don't drive to the first parking spot and just roll in. I usually take a lap around the aisle once. Now, I have far more training and experience than most people, but I still do it. I still take a lap around that aisle, and I want to make sure there's, like I said, no young males or group of males sitting in a car that appear to be, searching or looking around for potential victims. I always park on the end of an aisle where there's no car on at least one side, where I can see three sides of the car pretty easily. Mm-hmm. And park, even if I'm a couple of aisles away and I have to walk a little further, I'll park a little further, just get on the end aisle. So, for example, if I walk out of a big box store or like a Home Depot or some kind of a store, even though my car may be 100 feet away, I could see it from 100 feet away on the end of that aisle. And then I'm going to walk to it, and I'm going to take that wide arc, like I said, and I'm going to make sure that I've seen the front side, at least the back of the car, before I get close to it. And I've got my key in my hand, and the door is open, and I'm inside. Everything I said before is what I do and what I teach people to do.
Do you make a habit of backing into parking spaces rather than pulling in front and having to back out?
I don't do that. I've never owned a truck, so I never got into that habit. That would be one way. If you could pick an end parking place so your driver door faces out, where there's no car next to you, that would just enhance your visibility. But I'm not a backer-upper. I mean, that's just me. I'm old. I'm not going to change my ways now. I start backing up, I'm going to start crashing. But whatever works. If that works for you, then that's a good rule of thumb too. But that's my life, unfortunately. Now, I'm not a raving maniac walking around. It's just that my level of caution is very high and it's automatic, and I'm literally scanning. I can walk into an area and just scan very quickly and see things. When I check into a hotel, I stick pretty much to the couple of chains that I've either done work for. I know their quality standards, so I'm satisfied when I check in that it's going to be high quality and they're going to have good solid doors and good locks on doors and a good wide peephole and all those things. But I still have a routine, and my wife, bless her heart, does now too. We walk into that hotel room, we immediately are looking at the door locks and make sure it closes properly and it latches properly, and the deadbolt is working. I always look through the peephole. Always look in the bathroom, make sure nobody's in the bathroom, nobody's behind the shower curtain if they have one. I look in the closet. I'll never accept a room with an adjoining door, even if it has a deadbolt on it. Everything I'm telling you, I could tell you a horror story about, and I'm not going to bore your audience with horror stories, but there are some attached to it of the things that I do. Just to give you one little story, I was just at a Hollywood hotel, Hollywood, California, last month at one of these chains at a hotel I've stayed in a dozen times before. And I got in and the strike plate on the door to my hotel room was missing.
Okay.
Now, the ordinary person probably wouldn't even notice that, but I did. And I noticed that it compromised my latch. I noticed with that strike plate gone, now it wasn't making a solid connection, and you might be able to jimmy that from the outside. Well, I immediately marched downstairs and was ready to walk out of the hotel, but they got a hold of the maintenance person. The maintenance person trotted up, and he told me that they just did some lock maintenance everywhere, and they took off all the strike plates, and they forgot to put them back on. But something as simple as that could compromise your safety.
When staying at a hotel, do you avoid the first floor because of accessibility to the outside?
Yeah, I have a whole drill for that. I try to stay usually above the third floor just for that reason, accessibility. I've done a bunch of crime studies of high-rise hotels. I mean, some that are really, really tall. You look at the crime statistics, most crime is in the lobby. As you go up, then it's going to be in the mezzanine, the first floor, the second floor, third floor. As you get above the third floor, up to 5, 6, 7, the crime rate just starts falling off drastically. And also, if you were to use like a pin map, marking the crime rate on some hotel high-rise floor plan, you'll see that the majority of them occur near stairwells, the emergency fire stairwells, and near elevators. And it's all because of escape routes. Knuckleheads, they don't want to be trapped up on the 20th floor of a high-rise building, breaking into a room or getting caught by someone or attacking someone, and then have to travel all the way from top to bottom to get out. They want to be somewhere closer to the ground level. So my rule of thumb is I usually want to get at least above the third floor just to stop the penetration from the ground level. But I'm also aware of other things. I'm also aware of fire science. I mean, once you get above like the 5th or 6th floor, the fire department really can't help you.
That's right.
So that's offsetting. And if there's an earthquake, I'm in California, so it's something that we have to deal with here. I don't want to have to get down from the 20th floor during, an 8 on the Richter scale earthquake.
Right.
So I try to pick somewhere in between. And again, I'm such a frequent traveler, I can kind of pick and choose what floor I'm on or even what room I get these days. I could specify in advance.
That's what I was going to ask you, is it could certainly throw a wrench into your plans if you're trying to get a seat at a restaurant at a busy time and you're insisting on, say I need to find a booth where my back is to the, my back is against the back wall there facing the entrance. The host might say, okay, well, instead of a 5-minute wait, you got a 45-minute wait or something. But in areas where you can plan ahead and make your special needs known ahead of time, whether it's to hotels or restaurants or whatever, that could definitely ease that impracticality of some of those special needs.
Yeah, and those are all good points. And that's, like I said, it's my curse and my wife's burden now. But I've been doing this long enough, and I'm very, very well traveled. I mean, I've experienced all these things. We've adapted our lifestyle to make it as low risk as possible. We live in one of the lowest crime cities in the state. Used to be one of the lowest in the nation. I mean, everything is prepared, where I live, how I live, what my house is like, how I equip myself, how I'm trained, where we go. We tend to, if we're going to eat out, we go early, so we avoid the crowds. Going to the movies, we'll go at off hours. We're not going to put ourselves in crowd situations unnecessarily unless I'm working. Even then, I take extreme precautions. I just plan for everything. I'm just happen to be overly cautious. That's just me. But I don't plan on being a victim in my lifetime if I could do anything about it.
That's a great summary and a great wrap-up. I'd like to have you back if we can in the future to talk about some more of those principles and how they apply to people who are property owners. Most people here either have apartments or homes. You've talked to us about some of that in the past, but how we take that on the road with us when we travel, etc. But Chris McGoey, once again, if people want to find out more of your work at crimedoctor.com, what's their best way of plugging in with being able to find out more of your work? Because you have quite a bit of information available for the public.
Yeah, I have two websites, crimedoctor.com. I have articles on there that might be helpful. My newest venture is crimeschool.com. That's where I have close to 50 podcasts, similar to what we're doing right now, where I talk about my perspective and take on crime prevention. Well,
Chris McGoey, thank you so much once again for joining us here on Reluctant Preppers, and always great to have you here. And I know our viewers appreciate it. They're going to really relate to what you talked about being uncommonly cautious, and your spouse having to get used to that sort of thing. You're going to fit right in with our crowd. So thank you so much for joining us again here on Reluctant Preppers.
Anytime, Donegan.